So the Consumer Goods and Services Ombud responded to a sum of 33,467 queries, an average of 127 queries per day in the last financial year. This is according to the latest complaint stats released by the Ombudsman. The office also facilitated 12.1 million rand worth of refunds during this period. Let's now unpack the latest complaint stats with the CEO of the Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman, Queen Munyai. Thank you so much for making time for us this morning. I want to start off here before we look at the report. What's the difference between the Consumer Commission and the Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman?
Good morning, Aldrin. Thank you for having me this morning. The difference between you're saying the Consumer Goods and Services Ombud and
the Consumer Commission.
Oh, the National Consumer Commission.
Yes.
Yes, the National Commission is the regulator of the industry. They are the custodian of the Consumer Protection Act. So the Consumer Goods and Services Ombud is an alternative dispute resolution body which was formed in order as an alternative to the commission. So the commission is a more, I would say, a serious investigation platform, whereas an ombud comes in as a first port of escalation, where a consumer cannot get the complaints resolved at the store or at the service provider. They then escalate to the ombud, who is an independent body which was set up in terms of Section 82 of the Consumer Protection Act. So what we do as an ombud, our role is to mediate complaints between suppliers and consumers. And when we do that, we do it in a much more amicable way, not necessarily enforcing a lot of legalities and all that, but we are also bringing in a level of fairness in the conversation. So it's more a mediation role. Only when we cannot resolve complaints at mediation do we then escalate to the regulator, who is the National Consumer Commission. They can then investigate further, the powers that the Ombud do not have.
Okay, no, perfect. Thank you so much for that clarity. Now let's speak about some of the complaints that you've received, and the point that's being made here in the report as well is that, well, e-commerce only makes up around 5% of total retail sales in the country. The majority of the complaints are actually coming from these platforms.
Yes. So that is what we have observed in the previous financial year. We have seen a rise in fact, since COVID. If you look at our reports, what we've been reporting since COVID has been that we had began to see an uptick in the online transactions. So where complaints that are coming to our office were resulting from a transaction that happened online. We started to see a lot, which showed that consumers were more comfortable trading online. But in the previous financial year, on the other hand, we've started to see now consumers starting to return back to the brick and mortar stores, because we've seen a little bit of a decline from 34% of online transaction to 26% in the year under review, which is 2023-2024. So we are seeing that mainly online transaction, electrical appliances, telecommunications, and satellite services becoming the most what consumers are complaining about.
And what's the nature of most of the complaints that are coming from the e-commerce platforms?
At most, we are seeing that complainants are worried about the goods not being delivered on time. So it seems that our retailers have, I think, settled in terms of transacting online. But because they rely on collaboration with other service providers, there is still a work that needs to be done at that level, because deliveries are not reaching the consumers at the desired time. And then the highest also that we are seeing is that products are becoming defective within the first 6 months of purchase. So, as you may be aware, in terms of Section 55 and Section 56 of the Consumer Protection Act, there is an automatic warranty that a consumer, after purchasing goods, if the goods become defective within the first 6 months, they have to return it to the supplier, and the consumer has to choose whether they need a refund, a replacement, or a repair. So a lot of times we are seeing that suppliers are forcing consumers to take a repair over a refund or a replacement, which has been most of the challenges that we are seeing. We are also seeing poor service when attempting to resolve these complaints. So it shows that some of the suppliers are not yet aware of the Consumer Protection Act and how to apply it and how to provide redress to the consumer.
Or they're deliberately ignoring it
Yes.
because they know that the majority of the people won't actually go all the way to go and lodge a complaint.
Yes, that's a possibility. And that's why we keep on saying, in terms of how we operate as an Ombud, we are an Ombud scheme which is initiated by industry. Therefore, we also get funded by the industry itself through a participation fee. So what we do, we sign up all participate. In fact, in terms of the code that we operate on, which was promulgated by the Minister of Trade, Industry and Competition in 2015, it is compulsory for all suppliers in the goods and services industry to sign up to the CGSO. And one of the benefits that we give to the suppliers is educating them and assisting them on how to apply the Consumer Protection Act, which I think most of them are missing out on that.
Yeah. Still staying with online purchases, I'm sure you've seen some of the trends, what I've ordered versus what has arrived when people purchase online. But you have platforms such as Temu as well as Shein. Does the Ombudsman have jurisdiction over companies that are not necessarily registered in South Africa but are providing a service to South African consumers?
The Consumer Protection Act is applicable within South Africa, within the Republic of South Africa. Therefore, we have jurisdiction over suppliers that are trading within the country. However, now with the entry of such platforms that you have talked about, it's starting to pose new challenges because their products are accessible in South Africa. However, when we have to now reinforce redress for consumers, it's still a challenge, which calls for legislation amendment, to make sure that there is cross-border purchases which are also covered within the Consumer Protection Act. At the moment, what we do is to educate consumers on what to look out for when they are purchasing online, and to make sure that they can be able to spot the rogue suppliers, especially on social media and all other online platforms where consumers are preferring to purchase from.
Yeah, but have you received complaints about the purchases that were made on these two platforms at least?
Yes, we constantly receive those complaints, and what we do try and reach out to them. In other instances, we do get redress. They are responsive. But I think the challenge is that when they are outside of the country, our means to reach out to them are rather limited, because we then rely on email and telephone. And depending on their response time, that's when we expect to hear from them. Whereas locally, with the businesses locally, it's easier, because if we can't reach them, we have partners in the consumer affairs offices and other platforms in the provinces who then step in and do, even if it needs to visit those suppliers, then it comes to play.
Yeah, I wonder whether the World Trade Organization should also be approached on these particular complaints that are being lodged. But just a quick one. Wendy Nola had a piece on News 24 where she wrote about some of the complaints that have come through your office. And one of them is the question that you asked: can a mattress supplier refuse to honor the warranty on your defective mattress because there's a stain on it?
Yes, that's one of the complaints that we've done. In fact, I think we've dealt with quite a few of them, and we even hosted a webinar on that to try and unpack the matter, because the matter at play is the defective bed or mattress. So a lot of times you'll hear that suppliers want to hide behind the fact that they cannot replace because of the stain on the mattress, which is not a major part of what the complaint is about. So we've been able to facilitate those and actually advise suppliers on saying that let's focus on the defects on the bed and not the stain, because that is a minor issue which is also now blurring the whole matter. So those are the kind of complaints that we receive, and when we intervene, we're able to advise and guide the suppliers on how to respond, depending obviously on the matters at hand.
Queen, thank you so much for your time. Queen Munyai is the CEO of the Consumer Goods and Services Ombudsman. Really appreciate your time.